Wow, Happy New Year, everyone. But also, wow, what a way to start the year. A Cybertruck explosion in Vegas.
Yeah.
Not exactly the celebratory fireworks we were all expecting. And you guys, the listeners, you've been sending us articles like crazy.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. What happened? And maybe even more importantly, why?
Absolutely. It's definitely an event that's caught everyone's attention. I mean, seriously.
To say the least. Okay, picture this. It's New Year's Day, Las Vegas Strip, crowded, the usual, people recovering from their celebrations, and then boom,
hmm
a Tesla Cybertruck explodes right outside the Trump International Hotel. Shocking on so many levels.
Yeah, definitely. And the Cybertruck itself, that's what's really got people talking. I mean, these trucks are built like tanks, right?
Yeah,
They have that hardened exoskeleton and those advanced batteries.
right.
Super durable. So for one to just explode like this,
Yeah.
it's highly unusual.
And even Elon Musk, I mean, he said on X that he's never seen anything like it.
Oh, really?
And that the whole senior team at Tesla is investigating. What do you think about that statement?
Well, to me, that means even Tesla's stumped.
Right.
Which just makes this even more mysterious. You know, it raises all these questions about the Cybertruck's design or the tech.
Yeah.
Could there be some flaw, something they don't know about that led to this?
Okay, so let's back up for a sec and talk about what happened, like step by step.
Okay.
Our sources say the Cybertruck pulled up to the hotel around 8:40 a.m. quietly.
Quietly.
One eyewitness actually used that word quietly,
Yeah.
which, I don't know, just makes it even creepier.
It does add to the unsettling nature. It
Yeah.
makes you think it was intentional, deliberate, not like a mechanical failure where you'd hear sputtering or noise.
Exactly. If the engine was, dying or making weird noises,
Right.
but to just quietly pull up and explode, it's just eerie.
So right after it stopped,
Yeah.
smoke starts billowing out, and then kaboom, huge explosion. The driver was killed instantly. And here's the thing, they still don't know who it was.
Yeah, I noticed that in the articles. No ID yet.
Right.
Just adds another layer to this whole mystery.
It does. And 7 other people got hurt, thankfully, just minor injuries, but still.
Can you imagine being there, New Year's Day in Vegas? It's already crazy.
Right.
And then a huge explosion on the Strip.
The hotel had to be evacuated immediately, guests relocated, the whole area cordoned off.
It must have been pure chaos.
One witness, Stephen Furlando, he said he was on the 53rd floor of the Trump Tower. He posted that his windows shook from the blast.
It's amazing how quickly things spread on social media.
Yeah.
Videos, firsthand accounts, speculation.
It's information overload.
Right.
And social media, it's great for sharing info, but we've got to be careful not get swept up in rumors and stuff.
That's why we're here, to sift through all the noise, get to the truth. But speaking of truth, the big question everyone's asking is, why did this happen?
It is the big question, isn't it? I mean, they don't have an official cause yet. Investigators are still figuring things out.
Which, of course, just makes people speculate even more. So let's look at some possible angles. And this might sound obvious, but the location itself makes you think maybe there was a political motive.
Right.
A Cybertruck exploding outside a Trump hotel on New Year's Day. It's hard to ignore the symbolism there.
Yeah, it's a significant detail, especially with all the political stuff going on right now, and the fact that Trump's company partially owns the hotel.
Right.
And Eric Trump actually released a statement expressing concern for everyone involved and thanking the first responders.
Okay, and then there's this earlier that same day. Remember the horrific truck attack in New Orleans?
Oh, yeah.
The FBI's calling it terrorism. Could the Vegas explosion be connected somehow?
That's definitely something investigators are looking into. Could be a coordinated attack, a copycat, or just a terrible, terrible coincidence. It's too early to say for sure, but it adds a whole new dimension to the investigation.
So we have a possible political motive, maybe a connection to terrorism. And then there's the Cybertruck itself, which, isn't just your average vehicle. What do you think about that?
It's interesting, isn't it? We've talked about how tough Cybertrucks are. Like, almost indestructible. So why choose a Cybertruck for this?
Right. Why not use a regular car or truck? Something easier to tamper with, unless the Cybertruck was chosen on purpose.
Right.
Like to make a statement.
Yeah, exactly. Was it specifically chosen because it's a Tesla, a symbol of tech and innovation?
Right.
Could be some kind of anti-technology message?
There are definitely people out there who see technology, AI especially, as a threat.
Yeah.
Could this be a reaction to that?
It's definitely a possibility to consider, but we have to remember there are a lot of unknowns here. We need to look at all the potential motives
Right.
and really weigh the evidence carefully.
So we have the political angle, the terrorism angle and the anti-technology angle.
Mhm.
What else could be going on here?
Well, there are always personal motives.
Right.
We don't know anything about the driver yet, and that could be the key to this whole thing.
Yeah, maybe they had a personal grudge against someone at the hotel,
Yeah.
or against the Trump organization even, or maybe even against Tesla or Elon Musk himself.
Exactly. It could be completely separate from all these big theories floating around. Could be a personal vendetta,
Yeah.
mental health crisis, something we haven't even thought of yet.
So we basically have this giant puzzle with a lot of the pieces missing. And while investigators are trying to put it together, the rest of us are just trying to make sense of it all. It's a lot to process, I have to say.
It is, but that's where critical thinking comes in. We need to be really careful about jumping to conclusions before we have all the facts.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in speculation and all the sensationalism, but we need to be patient. Let the investigation run its course.
Which, I'll admit, can be frustrating. But that's how mysteries work, right? You have to wait for the truth to come out. So before we go too far down the rabbit hole of speculation,
Yeah, let's take a step back.
let's take a step back and look at each of these angles more carefully. Starting with,
Let's start with that political angle. I mean, it's the one that's all over the news, right? And it's interesting how quickly everyone just assumed this was an attack on Trump.
yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like the location itself, the Trump International Hotel, that's all anyone's focusing on. More than the actual event, the Cybertruck exploding.
Yeah, it's like people saw the name Trump and immediately went to like their own opinions about him, about his politics. It's become this lens, that everything's viewed through.
Exactly. And that's why we got to think critically here.
Right.
We have to separate the facts from our own biases. Okay, so let's look at the facts. Cybertruck explosion. Outside a hotel partly owned by Trump's company.
Right.
That's it. We don't know who the driver was, what their motivation was, their political views, anything. To just assume this was political, it's a jump,
Okay, but let's say for a minute that it was political. What would be the goal? To hurt Trump directly? Or damage his property, his reputation, to just cause chaos, scare people?
All possibilities. And if you look at, political violence throughout history, there are all sorts of tactics, goals. Sometimes it's about targeting specific people. Sometimes it's about symbols of power, institutions. Sometimes it's about creating panic. Sometimes it's about making a statement, pushing an ideology.
So in this case, the Cybertruck exploding outside a Trump hotel, that could be seen as like an attack on a symbol of his wealth, his power. And on New Year's Day, when everyone's supposed to be celebrating, maybe it was meant to like disrupt that, create tension.
Exactly. And don't forget, that hotel is a landmark, right on the Strip. Everyone sees it, tons of media coverage. An attack like that on a target like that, it gets attention, sends a message.
But wouldn't it make more sense to choose a target that's more directly connected to Trump? Like one of his homes or a rally? A hotel seems kind of indirect.
That's a good point. And it's another reason why we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions. The target, it could be significant, or it could be totally random. We just don't know yet.
And think about the consequences of something like this. If it was meant to hurt Trump, damage his reputation, it could totally backfire.
Oh, yeah.
People often sympathize with the victim, and something like this, it could actually make people support him more.
That's a great point. Violence often leads to more violence. It's rarely a good way to make political change. It can alienate people, make things even more divided, lead to things escalating even further.
Okay, so we've talked about the political angle, but we can't forget about the other big thing that happened that day, the New Orleans attack. It's hard to ignore the fact that we had two incidents, both involving trucks, happening on the same day. Could they be connected somehow?
It's definitely something investigators are looking into. I mean, it makes sense that people would see a connection, right? Both involved trucks as weapons, both caused casualties, and it was New Year's Day, a big day for the country.
But the FBI is officially calling the New Orleans attack terrorism. They haven't said that about the Vegas explosion. Does that matter?
It's an important distinction. Terrorism, by definition, it's about using violence to achieve political goals.
Right.
Creating fear, disrupting things. The Vegas explosion, yeah, it was violent, but we don't know if it was about politics.
So just because it happened outside a Trump hotel, that doesn't automatically make it terrorism.
Right.
There could be tons of other reasons.
Exactly. We need to be careful not to lump these two events together. They both involve trucks, sure, but that doesn't mean they had the same motivation, the same goal.
Okay, but let's say, hypothetically, they are connected.
Okay.
What would that tell us? Would it mean there's a single group or person behind both attacks? Or could it be like a copycat thing, where the Vegas attacker was inspired by what happened in New Orleans?
Both are possible. A coordinated attack, that would mean more planning, more organization, maybe a network of people, or a group with a specific agenda. A copycat, that could be more impulsive, someone who saw the news about New Orleans and got ideas.
And if it is a copycat, that brings up some really interesting questions about the media, how these events are reported. Could all the coverage of the New Orleans attack have actually inspired the Vegas attacker?
That's a tough one. The media, they have a job to do to inform people,
Right.
but there's always the risk of sensationalizing things, oversimplifying things. And with violence, it's a fine line between reporting the news and accidentally glorifying the people who did it, or even inspiring others to do the same thing.
It's like a chain reaction, almost.
Yeah.
The New Orleans attack creates fear, anger, the media amplifies it, and then maybe someone else sees that and gets inspired to commit another act of violence. It's kind of a disturbing cycle.
It is, and it shows how important it is to report responsibly and to be critical of what we see in the media. We have to be aware that these events can inspire copycats and be careful about spreading information that could make that worse.
So we've talked about the political angle, the possible connection to New Orleans,
Mhm.
and those are all valid points, but we still don't have any concrete answers.
And that's why we need to stay open-minded, explore other possibilities. Remember, the Cybertruck itself, that's unique.
Right.
It's not just any car. And the fact that they chose it, that could be important.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What do you think about the anti-technology angle?
It's definitely interesting. I mean, as technology becomes more and more a part of our lives, you see more pushback from some people.
Right.
They see it as a threat to jobs, to privacy, even to, human control.
And the Cybertruck, it represents cutting-edge tech, Elon Musk's vision of the future.
Right.
So it could be a target for people who feel that way.
Exactly. And remember that detail about the truck pulling up quietly? That could be a clue. Maybe they wanted the explosion itself to be the message, not the way they got there.
So they chose a Cybertruck because it's Tesla, Elon Musk, and they made sure it arrived silently before blowing it up.
Yeah.
That does sound like a deliberate act, meant to make a statement.
It does. And it reminds us that we have to consider all the possibilities, no matter how strange they might seem. People are complicated.
Right.
Sometimes the reasons behind these things, they aren't clear or rational.
So we have the political angle, the possible terrorism connection, the anti-technology motive. But what about personal motives?
Yeah.
We still know nothing about the driver.
Absolutely. We can't rule out a personal vendetta, a mental health crisis, something we haven't even thought of. Until we know more about the driver, their life, it's impossible to say how much personal motives played a part.
So it sounds like we're still at the beginning of this investigation.
Yep.
Lots of possibilities, but no real answers yet. It's like that jigsaw puzzle. We're just starting to find the edge pieces.
It is, and those missing pieces, like the driver's identity, their motive, those are crucial to understanding the bigger picture. We need to let the investigators do their job, but in the meantime, we can keep looking at the evidence, consider different viewpoints, and try to make sense of this. It's complicated and it's troubling, but that's what we do.
It's crazy, right? We've gone down all these paths
know.
trying to figure out this Cybertruck explosion. Politics, terrorism, anti-tech stuff, personal grudges. It's a lot.
It really shows how complicated this case is. And honestly, that's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
There's so much to uncover, and every time you think you're getting somewhere, more questions pop up.
Speaking of questions, what are some of the big ones that stand out to you right now? I'm curious, from your perspective as an expert, what are you watching for in this investigation?
Well, for me, the biggest question mark is still the driver. We need to know who they were. That unlocks everything else. Who were they? What was their background? What were they thinking? Until we know that, it's really hard to say anything for sure about why this happened.
Right, because depending on who the driver was,
Yeah.
it could totally change our understanding of this whole thing. Like, what if it turns out they were a disgruntled Tesla employee?
Right.
Or someone with a history of, like, anti-government stuff? That would definitely shift our focus.
Exactly. It could give us a clear motive and connect the dots in a way we can't right now. But then again, what if the driver turns out to be someone with no connection to any of the stuff we've been talking about? That would make this even more confusing.
Okay, so the driver's identity, that's top priority. What else are you looking at?
The technical details of the explosion itself were still kind of in the dark there. What blew up? Was it something you could just buy or something more, specialized? How did they set it off? Did they mess with the Cybertruck itself? Answering those questions, that could tell us a lot about how sophisticated this was, maybe even point to where the explosives came from.
Oh, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. Like, if they find out it was some rare explosive, something hard to get, that would narrow things down, maybe even point to a specific group.
Exactly. The forensics are going to be huge in this case. It's what connects the driver, the explosives, maybe even other people involved.
Like a real-life detective show. Okay, so let's play detective for a minute. Imagine you're on this case. Where would you start?
Oh, that's fun. Well, besides the obvious, checking out the explosion site, talking to witnesses, I'd be all over the driver's digital life. Social media, online shopping, their search history, all that stuff can tell you a lot about someone, what they were thinking, who they knew.
Their search history. That could be huge. Imagine they were searching for things like how to build a bomb or Cybertruck weak spots.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
That's like case closed.
maybe. But even smaller clues could be helpful. Were they following any extremist groups online? Posting about politics? Looking up specific places or people? Those digital breadcrumbs, they can help build a timeline, a picture of who this person was.
It's crazy how much info we leave online. It's like our digital fingerprint telling our story.
It is. And in this case, it might be the key to solving this. But it's not just about digital stuff. I'd also be looking into any connections the driver might have had to organized crime, terrorist groups, even those fringe political movements.
Because those are the kinds of groups that could actually pull this off.
Right.
And let's be real, a Cybertruck exploding outside a Trump hotel on New Year's Day. That's a powerful image, no matter the reason.
It is. And that's why this case has gotten so much attention. It's a mystery, but it's also a spectacle, and it's playing on our fears about technology, about politics, about what the future holds.
It's also a reminder that things can change so fast.
Yeah.
One minute you're celebrating, the next you're in the middle of something shocking and terrifying that came out of nowhere.
And then we're left trying to make sense of it all, trying to find answers to understand why and hopefully prevent something like this from happening again.
So where does that leave us?
Yeah.
We've looked at all these different angles, but we still don't know for sure what happened. What should we be watching for as this story develops?
The next few days are going to be important. Investigators will probably release more information about the driver, the explosives, any leads they've found. We should also listen to what Tesla says, what the FBI says, any official statements.
And keep an eye on social media
Oh, definitely.
for any updates or leaks, but remembering that not everything online is true.
Exactly. Social media can be helpful, but double check everything. Be skeptical of anything that's not confirmed.
So we wait, we watch, and we try to understand what happened. It's a reminder that the world can be unpredictable, and sometimes the answers are hard to find.
Well said. And I think that's a good place to end our deep dive for today. As more information comes out, we'll be back to break it all down, help you make sense of it.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone. It's been a wild ride so far, and it's not over yet. Stay tuned for more updates and deep dives as the story unfolds.